Welcome to the ultimate beginner's guide to paddle. In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to know as a beginner about the sport, how to improve quickly from defense to attack to tactics to general strategy and gameplay. This video will set you up to improve super fast. My name is Ewan. I've been playing paddle for about 3.5 years. I've been coaching for about 2 of those years. I've been lucky enough to be taught by some of the best coaches in the world and trained with some of the best players in the country as well. What I've done in this video is I've left chapters all along the bottom of this video so that you can switch between all the different sections, because at the start of this video I'm going to be covering the basic rules, your forehand, your backhand, but later on in the video I move on to the volleys, the bandeja, so feel free to switch between the sections that you want to focus on. If you're a complete beginner, I highly recommend you watch the entire video in its full because it's got everything you need to know, and I also encourage you to come back and revisit this video in the future. So for the most part, paddle is a doubles game with 4 players playing, 2 on each team. You do get some times where people play singles. I play a lot of sort of diagonal cross court, but that's mostly for training purposes. And there are some singles courts, they're about half the size of paddle court, but 99% of the time, and for the most part, it's a doubles game. To start off paddle, usually you would play to serve. This is where all 4 players on the court would have like a little rally, and whoever wins that rally gets to choose whether they want to serve or the other team serves. Alternatively, some people will spin the racket or toss a coin, and whoever wins that also gets to decide whether they want to serve or the other team serves. When you serve, you have to bounce the ball behind the white line. It can go up to your waist, and then you want to strike in the opponent's box. That's where the boxes come into play. The ball has to land in the opponent's box. If it doesn't land in the box, it's a false serve, and you get 2 serves just like tennis, and if you mess up both serves, then it will be a double fault and the opponent gets a point. If you serve and it bounces in the box and then hits the cage, that does not count. That would be a fault. The serve is allowed to bounce in the box and then hit the sidewall or the back wall. The ball always must bounce before hitting the back wall and the sidewall or the cage. If it hits the sidewall, back wall or cage first without bouncing, then it would be a point to the other team. Also, if you hit the ball and it doesn't go over the net, it hits the net, that would also be a point to the other team. After the serve and you play into the opponent's box, you can play anywhere on the other side of the court. It doesn't have to land in a box, it just has to bounce on the ground first. When you're returning a ball, you can play with a volley, or you can let the ball bounce, or you can let the ball bounce and then hit the back wall or the side wall or the cage and then play off that back wall. But it can only bounce once on the ground. It can bounce unlimited amount of times on the back wall and side wall, but if it bounces twice on the ground, that would be a point to the other team. Scoring is the exact same as tennis with one exception. So if you don't know, when you win a point, you get 15, then 30, then 40, and then if you win the 4th point, you get the game. If the score goes to 40-40, that's called a deuce, and you now play a golden point in paddle. So in the professional game of the World Paddle Tour, they'll play a golden point where whoever wins the next point wins the game. A lot of people still do the deuce advantage system, which is in tennis, where you have to win 2 consecutive points after 40-40. It's then first to 6 games, and whoever reaches that first wins the set. Moving on to the serve now, this is how we start our game. A common misconception with the serve is that we're trying to win the point off it. People come from tennis where they do the big overarm serve and they're desperately trying to get aces and win the point straight away. That's not really the case in paddle. We're usually just looking to pressure the opponent slightly and take the net position. We will cover the net position in the next few chapters, don't worry, but for now, we just want to move forward after the serve. You want to bounce the ball up to your waist and then strike into the box. My advice would always be to try and bounce the ball all the way up to your waist, that you can drive through the ball rather than hitting sort of up into the ball. And you want to aim toward the side glass. Side wall or glass is the best place to aim at because beginners, intermediate, even some advanced players will struggle at returning the ball off that side wall. It's probably one of the hardest things to deal with, is a ball going to the side wall and they have to try and hit the ball off the side wall. You're not really looking to play the serve too fast or too slow. You're just looking at playing at medium pace, keeping it fairly consistent and hopefully getting it towards that side wall. You then want to run to the net straight after the serve, stand at the net position, and then you can start to play. That is the main goal of paddle, to run to that net position. Basic tactics and positioning. Let's talk about the positioning at the net position. The net position is where we want to be. We win 90% of the points at the net position. So I see so many beginners and early intermediate players just sitting at the back of the court because they feel a little bit comfortable and safe back there, but they're not really going to improve or win many points back there. They might be able to defend very well, maybe not make too many mistakes, but if you want to improve your paddle, you've got to get to this net position. That's where you can win the points. The net position is at this 2nd post, not too close to the net. Again, unlike tennis where you're probably standing right on top of the net looking to kill the point straight away, we want to stand around the second post because lots of people lob a lot and we want to make sure we can get back in time for them lobs. The defensive position is at the back of the court, and that is between the white line and the back glass. This allows you to play before the wall and after the wall in the best possible way. Again, as a beginner, split the court into two key positions, the net position and the defensive position. Don't get caught anywhere in between these positions. The aim of paddle from defense is to get to the net position. It's not really to win the point. We're not looking to play amazing ground strokes past our opponent. We're just looking to win the net position. And then from the net position, your main goal should be then to win the point. You're looking at moving the opponents around, trying to wear them down, and then maybe get a winner with your volleys or overheads. A huge common beginner mistake is from the back of the court, players trying to play amazing ground stroke, which, don't get me wrong, they'll probably work at beginner level, but as soon as you reach sort of late intermediate to advanced level, people will just let the ball go past them and take it off their back wall. It's not really that impressive. Some real key, easy, basic tactics would be to play down the middle a lot, especially at beginner level. At beginner level and even early intermediate, the main reason why people lose is just they make too many mistakes. So if you really want to win a game, all you need to do is go into the game and play down the middle, because that will allow for the least chance of missing and errors. It's also quite tricky for opponents to defend because they'll both go down the middle. Does that make sense? They'll both try and go for the same ball down the middle. You also want to half the power on all of your shots. Again, people hit the ball way too hard in paddle. Play medium pace. I guarantee you at beginner level, all you need to do to win is basically just play more solid than everyone else. Everyone else will be making so many mistakes. Everyone will be hitting it long or trying to smash it out, and they might get a few winners, but they'll also get a lot of mistakes as well. Right, moving on to the first shot. This is probably one of the most fundamental shots, and that's just your forehand and backhand ground stroke. So unlike tennis, this isn't the most complicated technique. We don't need tons of spin and grip on the ball. We don't need some incredible Rafael Nadal forehand or Roger Federer backhand. This is paddle, which is very different. It's a much more basic technique. We just need a solid, compact, flat strike on the ball. We want to bend our knees slowly and get our left foot across for our forehand and our right foot across for our backhand. That is if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, it's just the opposite. So left foot across for your backhand and right foot across for your forehand. This will allow you to turn your shoulders and have the correct body shape for an optimal shot. We're looking to play the ball flat, not with much spin. That will allow for more consistency and a higher chance of getting just more balls in. And like I said before, we aren't looking to play winners when we're defending. We're just looking to play consistent and hopefully win the net position. We're just looking to make it trickier for our opponents to play really tough volleys and aggressive shots. Play soft when you're defending. You do have more time than you think. You need to stay nice and relaxed, and you don't want to be hitting the ball too hard or, and again, trying to force a winner. Keep getting that ball back every single ball. Try and stay in the point for as long as possible. The idea behind your hitting is just to win the net position and maybe just to move the opponents around at the net a little bit. You might want to play one nearer down the line so the opponents move across, and then after that you might want to play a shot down the middle. Moving the opponents around at the net will give them a higher chance of making mistakes, but it will also make it a lot trickier for them to play tough winners. Just a few basics on the technique is we want to prepare the racket quite low, finish with the racket sort of out in front of us, and sort of have a low to high motion, hitting the ball flat. Don't overcomplicate this shot. Try and just make it simple, consistent, and effective. Moving on now to our forehand and backhand after the wall. A huge tip is that the wall is your friend. It's not your enemy. It's not something to be scared of. As you get better and better at paddle, you'll actually enjoy the shots off the wall more than you will enjoy the balls in front of you. For example, for me, I'd much rather receive a ball that flies off the wall than right in front of me and having to take it before. That's a little bit more awkward, and the wall I can use to get more power, more control, and I'm more likely to hit a winner off that back wall. A few tips when defending off the back wall is to stay as relaxed as possible and make sure you get behind the ball. Let the ball bounce, hit the glass, and then play it off the wall on your forehand and backhand side. Try and keep it simple, try and stay relaxed, stay on the toes, don't lean to the ball or try and reach it. You've got to make sure you're always bouncing and moving, and remember, you always have more time than you think. A good return when someone plays it off the wall is to play a big lob if you can. When you're receiving a ball off the wall, you're most likely under pressure, and a lot of the time the players at the net will probably move a little bit closer to the net because they think they can attack you. So a big lob is a great response when retrieving a ball off the wall. Make sure you prepare super early. So bring the racket back, let that ball come in, and then have a nice flat strike, just like on your forehand and backhand ground stroke. Don't be someone that avoids the wall. A lot of players aren't very good at defending, so what they do instead is they sit at the back and they just volley everything, volley and half volley everything, basically desperately trying to avoid using the wall. This isn't a clever way of doing things because yeah, you might win a few points then, but in the long term, you're just always going to be that player that, yeah, they're pretty good at attacking, but they just can't defend how the other players can. The best thing to do is constantly mess up, trial and error, making mistakes off that back wall, but let everything hit that back wall, because then in 6 months down the line, you'll be an incredible defender and everyone else will still be at the same level. When you're trying to retrieve really low balls off the back wall, make sure to get behind the ball and have really low racket preparation, and also bend your knees as well. If you get nice and low with your racket low as well, it will be a lot easier to dig that ball out. Moving on now to the sidewall. This is the Achilles heel of a lot of players. I think a lot of people improve a lot, but they're always struggling with returning off the sidewall, especially when people play a serve to that sidewall. I mentioned earlier at the start of the video about the serve and how you should serve to the sidewall a lot because players hate it. This is a very hard one for a coach to teach as well. There's not some easy trick or easy method of just fixing your return on the sidewall, because depending on the speed of the ball, where the ball is played, the angle as well. My overall advice for the most part is that if the ball is going to hit the first part of that sidewall, you want to always let it hit. If you let it hit, that way it will bounce towards you and then you can play the ball off. Try not to run straight towards the sidewall as the ball comes in, because then when it hits the sidewall, it will bounce away from you and you won't be able to get it in time. If the ball is going to hit really far back in the sidewall, almost towards the corner, this is when they're serving, you really want to try and get that ball before the sidewall. A great tip that I was taught early on when I was struggling was just 2 words: forward and low. Getting low, having my body position low, and then moving forward as you strike helped me just get a nice solid strike on the ball, and it gave me such a higher chance. Make sure you're not too upright and leaning back too much. Try and get forward and low. The last part of the defense that we're going to cover today is the lobs. The importance of lobs I cannot stress enough. In the World Padel Tour, 25% of the shots are lobs. It's a crazy statistic. And that is because players just lob and they lob and they lob. The lob is effective for many, many reasons. It's a consistent shot. One, it buys you a lot of time. When you're under pressure, the best thing to do is stick a big lob in the air. Recover to your natural defensive position. It allows you to get your breath back. It allows you to slow down the rally, and it also gives the opponent a tricky overhead. Your opponent is probably most likely to miss an overhead like a bandeja or a high ball. So by constantly lobbing them, you're just giving them a chance to miss that shot. It's a tricky shot for them to play. The lob also allows you to take the net position. Now, we haven't covered this just yet, but when you're defending, like I said earlier, your main goal is to try and win the net position. And the way we can do that is by playing a lob over our opponents and then moving to the net ourselves. We want to push our opponents back. That is why the lob is so popular, because it's the easiest and simplest way of pushing your opponents back so that you can take the net position. Try not to have your racket held like a frying pan. Instead, you want to lift that ball up and strike it like a forehand ground stroke that have a really nice low to high motion, and make sure you get low and then lift up as well. Again, like with the lobs, it just takes a lot of practice, but this is another shot that you want to be practicing a lot. Don't be disheartened if you hit your lobs too short and too long. Make sure you keep practicing them, because it's such a crucial shot. I talk about the lob a lot on my channel because I still think it's an underrated shot. It's not the most glamorous shot, and that's why a lot of people don't talk about it enough, but it is so important. Moving on now to the forehand volley, our first attacking shots. This is when we're stood at the net position now, and rather than letting the ball bounce, we're going to volley it. We're going to hit it before it bounces. The forehand volley is one of my favorite shots. It actually probably is my favorite shot. The shot I'm probably best at. It's the shot I've practiced the most. I think it's very, very, very important, and you can win so many points off the forehand volley. The forehand volley is one of the best ways you can get a winner from beginner all the way to advanced level. Maybe not a World Padel Tour level as much, all the way through the ranks. A forehand volley can win you the point. The technique on your forehand volley is you want to have your racket prepared quite high. You want to turn your shoulders, turn side on, and strike the ball from high to low. Make sure to contact the ball in front of you, and if you can, adding a little bit of backspin. Moving on now to the backhand volley. Now for me, the backhand volley isn't an amazing shot to really try and win the point, especially from beginner to intermediate level. At advanced level, you will see this more. But when you're just starting out, you just want to keep your backhand volley very consistent. Again, like I said, with the forehand volley, you want to have good length on it, good direction, and keeping the opponent's back. It doesn't have to be this crazy winner. It's also quite tricky as well to get an incredibly good winner with the backhand volley. You want to use the backhand volley, obviously, when it goes to your backhand side, but also when the ball comes straight at you. A lot of players, when the ball comes straight at them, try and move like this, but really, you want to block here. I also say to prepare slightly in the backhand volley preparation, because a lot of people are very, very fast to get to their forehand volley, but then when it comes to their backhand, they're a little bit slower because it's not as comfortable a shot. So I like to prepare like this so that if it comes at me or to my backhand, it's very easy to block, and if it comes to my forehand, I can quickly move. With the technique on the backhand, again, you want to play it in a high to low motion. You want to contact in front of you, you want to turn your shoulders and strike. Again, keep it simple, don't try and add too much power, don't flick and snatch at the ball, play slowly through the ball and keep it consistent, get good length and good direction. When you're getting really good at your backhand volley, you can start to maybe put your backhand volley into more of an angle. I like to play a backhand volley across to the cage. With enough practice, this can be a super effective shot because it will bounce, hit the cage and come straight down. It will be very, very hard for opponents to get back. Next up, we have the bandeja. Now, I don't know how many of you might have heard of the bandeja if you're brand new to the sport, but basically this is one of the most important shots. It's probably one of the most unique overheads to the sport of paddle. The goal of the bandeja is to maintain the net. Always remember that. You play the bandeja when you're at the net position and someone plays a lob to you. They might stick the ball up in the air. You're then going to move back and play a bandeja to maintain the net. Bandeja means tray, and that's because the slightly old-fashioned technique was to prepare with the racket like this, as if you were holding a tray, and then you'd move back and then strike the ball like that. So they used to go tray smash, bandeja. You want to contact the ball around about your head height and again contact in front of you. A very easy way is almost play the bandeja when you're starting out, play the bandeja like a forehand volley but just with a high ball. The idea is to keep the opponent's back because you're maintaining the net. So imagine someone plays a lob, you move back, you play your bandeja and then you move back to the net position. The reason why we don't just extend our racket all the way in the air and just play like a normal overhead that you might see in another sport is because the ball will then kick up off the back glass quite a lot and it doesn't really do the job of keeping the opponent back. The idea with the bandeja is it's hard to deal with, it's hard to defend, and it forces your opponents to stay back of the court. Remember, like I said earlier with the lob, they're lobbing you to try and reach the net position. Their goal is to reach the net position. So you need to counter that lob with the bandeja to keep them back of the court. I'd always recommend you play the bandeja diagonal cross court. One, because there's more space in the court overall, and two, if it bounces off the wall, it's a lot harder to defend because the ball will come off the wall at an angle. For now, we'll just focus on preparing the racket high, contacting around head height, and again coming through the ball just like you do on your forehand volley. If you're really struggling with the bandeja, which I was for months and months, I could not get it. I didn't come from any other racket sport background, so I really struggled. What you can do is just kind of prepare high and push the ball back into play, but make sure you get the length and make sure you're pushing the opponents backwards. The whole idea is to maintain the net. So if they lob you, you play a bandeja and then you come back to the net position and they're still at the back, you've done your job right. We're now going to move on to some slightly more advanced tactics, and that's moving backwards and forwards, moving from defense to attack and moving from attack to defense. Those are the two main positions in paddle, and we're going to talk about how we transition between them. I said earlier, when you're at the back of the court, your main goal is to win the net position, which is correct. How could we do this? Well, for example, you might be thinking now, well, what about playing a lob, like we mentioned before as well? You play a lob over the opponent's head, and then you take the net position, and you stand at that net position you're in. You're now in the attacking phase, and hopefully both opponents at the other end of the court are at the back of the court and you won the net and you pushed them back. That is the main goal of paddle. Now you're at the net position, you want to try and keep it. However, your opponent is also going to try and take the net position themselves. So that's when they might play a lob all the way over you and then you're going to move to the back of the court and stay in your defensive position. You should only move to the attacking position if you hit the ball past the white line. So that could be a lob over the opponents, it goes past the white line at the end, or it could just be a ground stroke that goes past the opponents. It goes past the white line, that forces the opponent's back and allows you to take the net. If you take the net position without hitting the ball past the white line, that's usually when your opponent will just play the ball straight to your feet and you'll be out of position and you won't be able to defend it. It's only really safe to take the net position when the opponents are at the back of the court. And when you're at the net position, if your opponents play the ball past the white line, you need to move back with your partner. partner and retrieve it. When you're playing with your partner, you kind of want to mirror each other so that when I'm at the net, my partner's at the net. And then when I'm at the back, my partner's also at the back. Let's talk equipment now. As a complete beginner, I recommend you choose a paddle racket that is round, control-based, easy to use, and quite comfortable as well. What you can do if you do need help choosing a paddle racket is you can go onto Everything Paddle. There's a little WhatsApp button in the corner and you can contact me personally and I can give you advice on what paddle racket to choose. As you improve your paddle and become a better player, maybe someone that's a bit more aggressive and you want something with more power, that's when you can change the shape of your racket. You go to something more teardrop or diamond shape, so there's different shaped paddle rackets, and that will allow you to play a little bit more aggressive. People often ask, how much should I spend on a paddle racket? Well, like I said again, if you're a beginner, you could spend sort of between 60 and 80 pounds. With intermediate level, you can spend between sort of 100 and 150. And then finally, when you reach the advanced level, you can spend from 150 all the way up to like 400 pounds if you want. I wouldn't recommend you buy something that's like 30 pounds because it's usually not going to be very good quality. It'll probably break. It won't have much power, control, or comfort. It might give you tennis elbow, and it probably won't last very long either. Best to go minimum sort of 50 or 60 pounds if you want something good that's going to last. If you go onto Everything Paddle, we've got tons of racket reviews, all the different models. There's a tab where you can compare different paddle rackets as well. You can have a look and then you can find something that's really good for your game. Check that out. Also, if you follow Everything Paddle on Instagram as well, I've got tons of racket reviews, videos, and talking through different rackets and what the best equipment to use is, as well as general paddle tips like on this channel. So that was the ultimate beginner guide to paddle. Let me know if you've got any questions below. Revisit this video, revisit the different chapters. A lot of effort and work was put into this video, so I'd really appreciate if you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well.